Is starting off with the case of the Monday. There we go, Birdie. We've got the mic back. We're ready to go. Welcome, everybody, to another show here on the RAS Picks YouTube channel. Looking forward to the NFL Draft, live on YouTube, live on Spotify, live on Apple and X as well. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. More than 150 folks very quickly. Good to see you, Birdie. Good to see you, Brandon. Good to see you, Isaac, as well. A minute of dead air, which is going to kill any retention on YouTube, but that doesn't matter because this show is probably going to be outdated within the next couple of minutes as is because rumors are swirling, to put it lightly. We had, as I mentioned, Adam Schefter, Todd McShay, Daniel Jeremiah out of kind of nowhere with Mina Kimes doing the either or for all 32 picks. Peter Schrager finally chimed in after the move to ESPN. He had some comments with the mock coming up on Wednesday. Matt Miller has been going since last night as well with commentary. So a lot to talk about, a lot to figure out, a lot of odds on the move. We're going to go through all of the comments, all the commentary, get you up to date with everything going on and try and make sense of what is happening around NFL draft and NFL draft betting. Now, there's kind of an underlying, I don't want to call it an issue, but something that's holding everybody up, I would say, at the moment, which we talked about last week quite a bit. There is an overwhelming consensus in basically the top 7. And as all of these rumors started coming out this morning, I think there's validity to some of them. I do wonder how many of these are coming out in a way just to be different. The guys over at Underdog who have been doing amazing draft coverage, doing all this prospect work, in the last, I would say, like 2 to 3 days, it seems like their tone is switching just to be a little bit different. I think there's a real hesitation we're going to see this week of guys with their final mocks or their final commentary or the last thoughts or what I'm hearing that are going to be putting things out that are different from this consensus top 7 that everybody's kind of been locked into for the last 7 to 8 days. It puts you at a decision as a bettor. Do you buy into this big like run of info? Because the only reason everybody got to this top 7 consensus is because there's a lot of info suggesting that these guys are going to go in this order, with the exception of maybe Mason Graham, who I still don't really understand how he got locked into 5. But it's like, do you buy into this, or do you buy into what's coming now because it's different and you're going against all these prices? It's kind of a decision to make. I don't know which side is right or wrong, but I do think you're kind of at a choice now. If you really haven't been betting the draft so far, do you kind of overpay for what's already been said, or do you just try pick spots that are against that consensus and probably inflated? I think that's the choice you're in right now as a bettor. So there's a choice to be made as we go through this, and keep that in mind as some of this might be just coming out in the next few days with the intention to be a little bit different, more so than anything rooted against basically, I don't know, like 2 full weeks of pretty good info from reliable sources. So let's start off with Peter Schrager, just because it's the quickest. It came out last night. He tweeted at 8:11 p.m. my time, 10:11 p.m. Eastern time. Having spent the entire weekend on the phones, here are 2 names who'll go higher than where their consensus mock drafts have them going right now. Number 1, Michael Williams. Number 2, Colston Loveland. Plenty more to come this week. My mock goes up on Wednesday. So there are 2 names that stand out for guys that Peter Schrager, according to teams that he has phoned, according to teams that he has talked to, are expected to go higher. For all of the meaningful mocks, which are now getting, I would say, a little bit out of range, Michael Williams has been as high as 8th, as low as 29th, which I think is silly at this point. We can rule that out. That's just a little bit dated. Lots of his trending number is around to the 13 to 15 range for where he's going in the mocks. Colston Loveland is in that 17 to 19 range. That's where both of their prices have been, and that's kind of where we're seeing both of them as well. So 2 guys that Peter Schrager expects to go earlier than where they are in consensus mocks. Number 1, Michael Williams. Number 2, Colston Loveland. If you've been watching the shows for 2 weeks, you probably have some ticket on a Colston Loveland under, probably at 19.5. He is now 17.5 with the under shaded to minus 450. So that is being bet under consistently, with that under moving in quite a bit. And then the biggest price of any position that hasn't changed position, Michael Williams opened 15.5. That initial opening price at 15.5, the over was minus 130. The under at 15.5 is now minus 600. So as I'm saying, you kind of have to put yourself, if you haven't bet anything yet, you don't have any existing positions, you're saying like, where are you going to go from here? You have to make the decision. Do you like really overpay? I wouldn't say to do that with either of these guys at these current prices, but are you willing to say that you're going to go against the consensus and take what could be an inflated price with so much uncertainty in the draft? You're seeing some pretty significant moves here in the last 48 hours on some of these guys. Let's move to the Adam Schefter article, which hit this morning. Last year, the Adam Schefter article had Michael Penix, number 8, to the Atlanta Falcons. It was the first time that was brought up. I think it's the first time that anybody saw that happened or mentioned or referenced anywhere. And that elevated what is always a very impactful article on these Monday mornings of draft week and kind of elevated it into, I want to say, a bit of legend status because of the prices that came with some of those Penix bets. Now, this morning, this came out around 6:10 a.m. Eastern time. So we are obviously a few hours removed, and things have definitely moved because there's a heightened focus on this Schefter article after what happened last year. The big name that was mentioned in this article that stood out as a big bet that you could potentially make was Todd McShay going number 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was 55-1 yesterday. Clearly something from here got out, perhaps leaked a little bit, because yesterday, kind of out of nowhere, Todd McShay went from 55-1 to 33-1 to go number 5 to the Jags. At that time, there wasn't a lot of news. There wasn't really anything published. I don't know how anyone maybe reasonably got to that consensus unless you knew that this was coming, which seems to be the case. It is draft week. You're going to have leaks. You're going to have things going a lot differently. And that now this morning is down to as low as, looking at the unabated odds screen, which is free if you want to look at it. The current price for him to go number 5, the best price available, as I scroll down to look at it, it was 12-1 before I came on air to be drafted number 5 overall. Currently, Todd McShay is down to, well, there's 13-1 at FanDuel. There was 14-1 at DK. So you can still find some of those prices available. Again, are you willing to overpay a little bit, or is that going up a little bit too far? Birdie says, he said McMillan fits Cohen and that Bucks setup. That is what MJD said in DJ's pod 2 weeks ago. I know you love that pod. I certainly was not ever connecting that comment to that. So good on you if you were able to spot that, Birdie. I know you've been on top of a lot of this. That could be one of them. So that stood out in the article. A couple other ones that stood out as well. Armand Membu looks like a top 10 pick top 10 lock, pardon me, with the Raiders number 6 and Jets number 7 being possible destinations. A pair of Texas players, offensive tackle Kelvin Banks and cornerback Jahdae Barron, have generated less talk than some other prospects at the positions, but both are in position to go higher than some people realize, with Banks being in play for Miami at number 13 and Barron being linked to the Jets at number 7. If Barron goes to the Jets at number 7, it would suck to lose that over, which is still at 18.5 with the over at minus 180. I know Evan Silva had Barron going number 5 to the Jags in his first mock last week. Now there's talk from Schefter with him going higher. This is all kind of coming in late after it was 2 weeks of Barron being a very highly rated guy, but teams having him in the 20s or later. So there's a bit of a divide there. It would be awfully unfortunate to lose that over with Barron going to the Jets. And then also being a Jets fan on top of that, knowing that the Jets very much probably overdrafted a corner in Barron with his skill set at that position. Do I like the fit now? They've extended Gardner. Okay. But with other options that would be available, that would be tough. What I would say with Aaron Glenn and the connection that's being made to him and cornerback positions, that has been something that has been said almost every year that he's been with the Lions as well. I don't know where the Barron Jets ties come from. And I was surprised to see him 5 in Silva's mock as well. But that's now gaining a lot of steam this morning. Kelvin Banks is a guy we've talked about under 13.5 for a while now. He's getting more steam this morning. His current price at 13.5. Under 13.5 is now minus 425. That opened up minus 175 last week. So lots of under money coming in on Kelvin Banks Jr., especially now with that Dolphins offensive line spot opening up last week, is gaining steam there. Other commentary that I've seen in that article from Adam Schefter, Schweisinger, first round, yes, has been at plus 400. But there was commentary about him last week, which is where you start to see some of these differ and you start to see differences of opinion. As a linebacker, he was mentioned last week in a Athletic Football Show video where there was commentary about what guys are going to be doing in the second round and how guys are going to go further down the board. And he was mentioned specifically. As I pull this up, it's a big scramble to get through to everything and try to figure out where all the notes are with so much going on this morning. But there was specific commentary about him. He was viewed as a day 3 guy initially. And then what really kind of got this moving was on the Athletic Show with Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler last week. They went further down the board and they were talking about day 2 guys, day 3 guys, and how everybody was potentially going to fall. He was mentioned as a likely top 50 pick. And that was the first time really anywhere in the whole draft news and draft intel kind of cycle that there were really ties to him being more than a day 3 guy. And so on April 16th at 10 in the morning, we go back 5 days, he was a top 50 pick. And now all of a sudden on Monday morning, he's being labeled as a possible first round pick. And so that is now at plus 400. Which has come in significantly from some of the prices that we were looking at last week as well for another linebacker to go in the first round. That does seem like a pretty drastic change. Trying to find fits for him down the board does seem a little bit difficult, but that is the current news as he's being linked to the Commanders at 29, which Bertie will not like because you've been on the running back to Washington train for a while, as well as the Bills at number 30. But it does seem like the Bills would go D-line or corner at 30. To me, anyway, who am I to overrule Schefter in this spot? But that's gaining a lot of attention here this morning. Let's get to the Todd McShay YouTube show. And there is some overlap that we are going to see in this to the Adam Schefter article. And so when you think about like the Peter Schrager tweet where he says he's been on the phones and he's talking to everybody, and then you see the Adam Schefter article, and then you see the Todd McShay show, you start to wonder if these guys are really kind of overlapping, talking to very similar people, getting fed the same info or the same story, right or wrong, because you start to see some overlap and some commentary that fall over. So in the Todd McShay show, which I want to say was probably recorded sometime over the weekend, he also has McMillan going number 5 to Jacksonville as a recent line of news that he has been hearing from the team. And specifically, he said there is a shift in information suggesting the Jaguars are now focusing on offensive skill players, with Tet being the first name mentioned. This would be a big change for Mason Graham, who's been mocked everywhere to go number 5 to the Jags. And so within the span of, if I go back 4 hours, when the McShay show was posted, that was 5:14 local time, 4:15 local time. The Schefter article was posted. There's no way McShay was recording at the same time it was posted, so it wasn't like a follow-up because there were edits in the video. So I think both of these guys heard about the McMillan going 5 to Jag stuff over the weekend, and then both raced out to report it this morning, and that's where we're seeing a lot of that. Also in the Todd McShay show, there was a lot of commentary about how they do not expect Ashton Genty to go number 6 to the Las Vegas Raiders. And what was hard for me to decipher in the show specifically, and I couldn't tell, is was Genty expected to go earlier than 6, or were they suggesting that he was going to slide? They didn't make sort of a direct reference to it, and it was hard to decipher a little bit. And so the adamant stance was that Genty was not going 6 to the Raiders. The other adamant stance that I heard on the McShay show this morning was that Will Campbell was believed by many around the league not to be worth that high of a pick, taking him at 4 for New England would be significant deviation from the idea of best player available. And so this has been kind of a growing sentiment, I would say, the last 3 to 4 days, going back to the later portion of last week, where a lot of guys starting to talk down Will Campbell and how the certainty around him going number 4 perhaps is a level too high for what it deserves to be. So all of a sudden, Will Campbell taking a bit of a detour and going back the other way from where he was rated so high in the draft, which stands out and is a little bit interesting because just like Mason Graham at 5, just like Ashton Genty at 6, just like Armand Membu at 7, these picks have just been locked in for so long in addition to the top 3 that, again, I don't know if there's been like a fundamental change internally with some of these teams for these specific players. Perhaps they were over-reported in the 2 weeks prior. Perhaps now this is just talking in a different direction and reporting in a different way to have something stand out and is different. Just as Todd McShay said on his own show, there is so much narrow-mindedness of everybody getting to the same conclusion with the order of these picks. So I start to look at the Todd McShay show and hearing those comments as, is he now trying to avoid being in that same camp of narrow-mindedness and kind of bring in different storylines? And I didn't, in the Schefter article, see the same level of negativity around what we were seeing for Will Campbell. It certainly wasn't as overwhelming and strong as some of the other places that were making it, but this seemed to be more so McShay pushing that forward a little bit more. Not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying there was a bit of that stance taken. Now, for Shedeur Sanders, there was commentary, initial buzz about New York Giants showing interest, but there is a conflict between personnel department and coaching staff, and it is believed that the coaching staff is more negative on Sanders than the personnel department. Personnel department is higher on Sanders. Brian Daboll and the coaching staff is lower on Sanders. And what stood out was that his floor was mentioned at pick 21, now being softer, and there's a chance that he could fall past that. There was also commentary about how Brian Daboll specifically did not seem to rumored to be that high on Sanders at all. And if common sense would prevail, was the quote used, the Giants would take Abdul Carter at number 3, would certainly give them a very dominant defensive line if they're able to take Carter, who at one point was very much speculated to be the number 1 pick in the draft before combine injury and Cam Ward took over as the consensus number 1. So Sanders continues to fall. For the Saints specifically, I think that team is being viewed as the out for Sanders in the top 10. But we're hearing now Saints very much rumored to be drafting or looking at defensive line players. There was a quote in the Todd McShay show that said New Orleans is not expected to take Sanders at 9 nor at 40, and they're considering Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, and Shamar Stewart. So if you were buying into the Sanders continues to fall hype that is continuing to grow in sentiment and strength, on FanDuel specifically, there is a market team to draft Shedeur Sanders. The Saints are the favorite at plus 210. Browns plus 360. Steelers plus 400. Giants plus 410. Raiders 13-1. Jets 16-1. If you think the Saints are not going to draft him and you're buying into what is being said on the McShay show, and you're buying into, even in the Schefter article, as he's talking about Sanders and where he might end up falling, you're maybe not necessarily buying into what that looks like. And what I would say is, if you're thinking about the Saints with the new offensive coordinator hire and the connections to his son potentially next year, as well as Manning, there's kind of perhaps reason that the Saints are looking forward that might kind of help you buy into that Saints not drafting Sanders commentary and rumors as well that are standing out. So if that continues to slide, you probably think that market on FanDuel is incorrect with the Saints being the favorite, and you might be looking at Saints defensive line. I know I heard VR with Gill on Friday, if I'm getting my days right, talking about how he expects the Saints to go that direction. At the time that he mentioned it on the show with Gill, that was around 6-1, I believe is what he said in price. Defensive line edge is now 3-1 at DraftKings, with that continuing to come in further. Other comments that were mentioned as I talk about some crossover between McShay and Schefter this morning. Jade Barron mentioned as a guide to watch for the Jets at 7. My goodness. If that happens, both guys this morning seem to think that there's a chance that it will. James Pierce and Mike Green mentioned with Atlanta and Cincinnati, teams that are looking to target defensive line and edge rushers, where there's expected to be a run between pick 7 and pick 17, include the Jets, Panthers, Saints, Falcons, and Bengals. 5 teams targeting edge rushers. Certainly buy into Panthers, absolutely. Talked about that in the newsletter a couple weeks ago. Starting to buy into the hype. Falcons, that goes back to the draft and combine with the commentary that was sent out on the newsletter and how they were looking as a goal this year in the draft to boost their position at edge rusher and be better at rushing the quarterback. And then the Bengals with Al Golden coming in, certainly looking to draft younger defensive players earlier in the draft with a big position of need, especially if you think Trey Hendrickson moves on. That would be edge rusher and defensive line as well. So those were 5 different teams. And you think about the positional totals and the impact that that would have, that continues to get bet over as well for defensive line edge rushers to go in the first round. That price every morning creeps up a little bit higher. Handful of comments before we get to the Daniel Jeremiah mock with Mina Kimes. As I take a sip of coffee, we got a new coffee machine. We got the full espresso setup. And so it is a lovely, lovely Monday morning. It's very hard to look at it and not take a sip as we go. Hooey hooping. Tyler Warren went from minus 1,000 to minus 400. First tight end taken. I've seen Loveland, tight end, first tight end taken, get a lot of steam. I've seen Matthew Golden. Back to last week, we were talking about it on the show Wednesday, Thursday, getting a lot of steam. First wide receiver taken. That's now taken a bit of a U-turn a little bit with the Tet going 5 stuff coming in. But yes, I've certainly seen that too. Hooey hooping. Birdie, the closer the draft gets, the more it feels like starting at pick 4, the draft gets blown up. There could be some really nice plus money wins in this draft. If I had bet nothing to this point and I had read nothing to this point, and it was day 1 for me thinking about betting on the draft, and I came around and I tuned into this show, I would very much be looking to say, how can something in picks 3 to 7 go away from consensus? And how can I bet against that with something that I can take a flyer on? I think that that's the best way you can do it. The other way that I would approach it, albeit probably a different sentiment now than I would have had last Thursday, Friday, is what about some of those guys on the edge of will they, won't they go in the first round? Can I bet into as well? I still think there's a few guys on the fringe that stand out that you might be able to bet into. Last Friday, Daniel Jeremiah on the conference call, the one that he did prior to the draft, his update on the live stream, there were some names mentioned on there as well, and all those prices came in this morning, as I mentioned, with the UCLA linebacker, Schweisinger, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. His prices come in quite a bit. So that's how I would be looking to kind of attack it if I've bet on nothing so far to date, and I was looking to find some stuff as well. Birdie, I mentioned this last week. If you listen to Ben Johnson and what excites him about Williams, Loveland has more scheme value than Warren. I would agree with you, especially with who's currently on the roster as well. There's comments from Michael Sarah. Vrabel had Henry. Might they see Genty as a bell cow? That's becoming pretty, I don't want to say common, but it's the Monday morning common take, Genty 4 to the Pats. And I think that's a good time to segue into the Daniel Jeremiah mock with Mina Kimes. So this is not Daniel Jeremiah's Wednesday mock, where on the conference call on Friday, he said his final mock is going to be what he's hearing from all of the teams and based on the intel that he is gathering, not what he is projecting to happen or what he would think is interesting, like he did with the first 2. Peter Schrager's comes out Wednesday as well. I think Matt Miller said his final one is Wednesday too. But in this video, which to me looks like it was recorded over the weekend based on some of his takes, he was presented with that exact question. If you're New England at number 4, are you drafting Campbell or are you drafting Ashton Genty? And he said that he was put in a bind by that question because he's taking a guy in Genty who he has rated higher than Campbell. But if he was in the Patriots position, he would be taking Campbell at number 4 over Genty to bolster the offensive line and continue to build that team, as he thinks Genty going into that scenario isn't quite going into a scenario that's fit and built out for him to succeed. So this isn't, again, a mock format that's traditional for what Daniel Jeremiah does. Mina has guests on the show, and she goes through what are the common scenarios. So that's a good example. Genty at 4, real or wrong. And then she gets opinions to say basically yes or no and take the common guy or go the different direction. For what it is worth, as we stand here on Monday morning, the order of players that Jeremiah had were Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, Graham, Genty, Membu, Walker, Sanders, Warren in the top 10. He did not deviate too far from this consensus that has really been kind of locked in for the last 2+ weeks. So while Schefter is reporting and going a different way with some stuff that I think is very valid and worthwhile, especially given the track record of that article, with McShay going the other way as well, you have this video, however serious it might be, is up to your discretion to determine, but you have at least Daniel Jeremiah sticking with this consensus top range of guys that everybody kind of seems to be veering just slightly away from. He's staying put and rooted in what we've seen. Now, things that stand out to me from the other picks that he gave in that mock with Mina: Matthew Golden, number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver number 1 off of the board. Colston Loveland, number 14 to the Colts, tight end number 2 off the board, but well under any of his posted prices. Jahdae Barron, number 11 to the 49ers. All the excitement that I had rooted in those early comments about Barron seemed to be dying a very slow death, unfortunately. Mike Green going to the Bengals. Jahad Campbell going to the Falcons. Michael Williams falling to the Buccaneers. What a win for Todd Bowles that would be. Marion Hampton, 20 to the Denver Broncos. Ezeraku, perhaps buying into those combine videos where Ezeraku was just pumped to talk about the Packers and Jeff Hafley and the connection and how he's already had talks with Green Bay, yet Ezeraku going to the Packers. And then at the end, he had Trey Amos, who's a first-round candidate and a guy that was mentioned in the press conference on Friday as jumping up draft boards in a big way and being a first-round guy that is expected to go day one. We saw his price to go first in the first round drop, but he is still at plus 145. He had Amos going to the Bills on the back end. Birdie, he unfortunately had Washington taking Ibuka, the wide receiver. That would be wide receiver number 3 in the round. He had the Chiefs going O-line with Simmons, and he had the Eagles taking a very underrated guard in Tyler Booker, pick number 32 overall. So that is how DJ saw or at least played out the Mina Kimes show over the weekend. Last batch of rumors: Matt Miller, NFL draft scout. He went on a bit of a post-tear last night as the wife and I were sitting down to watch TV, got the notification, picked it up. Okay, here we go with Miller. Dropped him in the footballbetters.com telegram. Matt Miller specifically says, talking to teams, the positions that are going to fly off the board day one are offensive tackle. Poor depth after the top 4 to 5 was the reason. Tight ends are going to fly off of the board. Safe picks in uneven class. Defensive ends are going to fly off the board 6 at least in round 1. Cornerbacks, back half of round 1 run, big drop off to second tier. There was a comment from Coach Mike Sanford as the top comment. Not running backs, question marks. Matt Miller said Genty will go. Hampton will go round 1, but I'm hearing more teams are willing to wait than not because of the depth on day 2. So take that for what it's worth from NFL draft scout Matt Miller, offensive tackle, tight end, defensive end with at least 6, and then quarterback back half of round 1 on a run. So if you are getting into perhaps betting the draft live with some of the in-play props as you get towards the back half of the first round, if some of those corners start to slide, you're probably going to see their value increase. Tight ends expected to go early. Offensive tackles expected to go early. Defensive ends expected to go early as well. The Hef, back for another show. Good to see you. Let's have some fun, he says. Membu 4, Walker 5, Tet McMillan 6. My goodness. What would that pay in a 3-leg parlay? You'd retire if they're willing to pay out and they actually process the payment. Connor Whitaker, Tet McMillan now 10-1 to go 5. So that price continues to come in. Birdie asks, how does one get into the Football Bettors Telegram? In the description of the YouTube video down below, there is a link that'll take you directly to it. You can sign up. It's very similar to what I post and retweet on Twitter, but I'm just dropping links in there, maybe a bit more of a direct notification. Also want to remind everybody, www.oddslogic.com. If you use the promo code RAS, there's a link in the description as well. You can sign up for a free 7-day trial. NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, MLB with a couple dozen games per day, every single day. What a great time to try a new odds screen. I couldn't say that enough. Odds Logic is fantastic. Desktop, mobile, Mac, Windows, no issues, very fast speed, comparable or better than all competitors, and you get significant sportsbook coverage as well. I say it's suitable for 95% of bettors. I've yet to hear a negative comment about oddslogic.com. You can use the promo code RAS for a free 7-day trial and see for yourself that it is as good or better than competitors. And if you're a professional bettor, if you're a recreational bettor, if you're somewhere in between, I can't think of a better time to experiment with new odds software than late April. Getting ready to go into the spring and summer months. Everything slows down. Great time to give it a try. Oddslogic.com with a promo code RAS. Couple comments to wrap things up this morning. Connor Whitaker says, if Genty goes 4, it won't be in New England. Yeah, that's a good point, Connor. I think I would agree with what you're saying for that. What I would say, I was thinking about that this morning before I came on the show, and I'm organizing notes, and I was looking forward to just a calm, easygoing show. Was going to do an odds update, was going to share a few opinions, and then Schefter article, Schrager tweets, McShay show, DJ with me, and I was like, oh God. So I was scrambling a bit. But something I was thinking about, when I hear a lot of this Genty talk, we think about like last week's circuit 6.5 to the under. We think about how books have adjusted the price more than 3 positions, how he's labeled as this top 5 talent. What's interesting is, even though the Raiders are now losing a lot of steam to draft Genty, and we're seeing that opinion differ and things start to change quite a bit, we're not really seeing the market change that much on him. And so unlike some of these other guys that are seeing their prices go back the other way as rumors go against him, even though it's not being discussed and talked about by some of these guys that are reporting, it doesn't seem like the negativity around Genty is that he is going to slide. I just haven't heard about a team necessarily moving up to get him. I know there was a comment about the Bears would be praying he's available at 10. Would the Bears ever trade up? I think it's probably going to be tough to justify the trade as highly as he is rated. But I'm with you that I think if he is going to go earlier and it's not the Raiders, I think there's another team that comes up and gets him. Connor says, I would be floored if the Pats don't go Campbell at 4. It's been leaked locally. That is the direction they're going. But new coaching staff will be good information to know going forward. National versus local. There we go. Great comment there, Connor. Good to know as well. Jeremy says, Tyler Warren will be a Panther. Give Bryce his Greg Olsen. That would be an interesting direction for Carolina to go. Greg from Coach Speak Index would be doing cartwheels in his house while singing karaoke on a live stream if that was the case, because he's been dropping those notes. I know in the Fantasy Points article he had it. He's been in his Telegram or his Discord, posting about the Panthers' ties to tight ends. he would probably be the happiest person out there if that was to be the case, Jeremy. So hoping for it. Chris, good to see you back for another show. Have you heard any buzz around Atlanta potentially trading into picks 7 and 9? Seems like Michael Walker should be there, and have heard them linked to those two and not any of the other edge D-line prospects. I have not heard that specifically, Chris. I would say something worth noting, James Pierce and Mike Green, according to Todd McShay this morning on the show, mentioned with Atlanta and Cincinnati. So perhaps two guys there in that mid portion that maybe he's hearing something specific about that might tie him into, rather than it being like a local news report. So something, I don't have a timestamp for that, unfortunately, but something that was mentioned on the McShay show this morning. Matt Smith, if Graham doesn't go number 5, how far does he slip? I bet him 50-1 to go 10th to Chicago. Probably a donation to Caesars, but I like the value. Good thought there as well. Any final questions anybody has, drop them in the chat before we wrap up. Other comments that I want to say, if you're not signed up for the free footballbetters.com email newsletter, now is a good chance to do so as well. Now that the show is wrapping up, you can head over to footballbetters.com, sign up for the free newsletter, and you will be good to go to keep up with everything you need to know heading into the draft and throughout the NFL offseason. Any news, rumors, opinions, and a lot of previews coming from my side would be great to have you on board at the footballbetters.com email newsletter. Free to get in your email inbox. Issues come out about once a week. And with the preview guide beginning to be published in the next week or two, team by team, preview by preview, they'll be going out a little bit more frequently than that. But if you want to keep up with everything going on this NFL offseason, head over to footballbetters.com. Last two comments. James, are quarterbacks sliding? It certainly sounds like they are. In the Jeremiah mock, he had 2. Todd McShay, in his show, he was talking about New Orleans not expected to take Sanders at 9 or 40. Mentioned the floor at pick 21 being softer, could fall past that. And in the Schefter article specifically, the comment around Jackson Dart, I'm going to scroll and try jump to that. Too many tabs going on at the moment this morning. The commentary around Dart was not nearly as strong as it used to be. I say used to be, relating to last week. And so it does seem like quarterbacks overall are sliding down. Joey Marnacino. Oh, I butchered that name. I struggle with the Italian names. The double C's get me. Signed on late. Any thoughts on a few wagers we should look at today after all the news dumps? I'm sorry about that. I hate butchering names in the comments. I should stick to first names only, but that's my bad. Whereas I took the biggest risk with Feduni. I hope he's watching. And the first day that I nailed that show, I was so happy. And he gave me confirmation in the chat. So, Joey, I butchered it. I'm sorry. Any wagers that you can look at right now this morning, if you wanted to go and take another last name that I'm going to butcher, if you're looking at first-round guys that you can bet, I'm pulling up the current price so I can give you the exact price that you can take. First to go in the first round. So something that I would say you can still bet and is still a good price to look at, which ties back to the conference call last Friday, which ties back to the recent Jeremiah mock this morning with Mina Kimes. Mock is in quotation marks. Trey Amos, first round, plus 150 is something that you could look at taking this morning. If you wanted to take a bit of a longer shot, you could play Tet McMillan 5 to the Jags and hopes that Schefter repeats what he did last year with the same article that was very high. It got a couple bets at like 30 and 40-1 right in that. Penix was the standout in that. So if you think this year's Penix in that article is Tet McMillan going 5 to the Jags, you can get that at 14-1. Another one that you can look at, Schweisinger at 4-1 to go in the first round. I didn't bet that. It was in the Schefter article that he is possibly a first-round guy. You get a bit of a longer price and a bit of a flyer with that. Membu, number 6 pick, plus 350. Not something that I bet because I think it's true, but something I bet just a little bit to cover against that position that I have over 6.5. He's plus 350 to go number 6. Anything else that stood out? If you want to follow the Schefter article again, you could take Baron number 7 at 33-1. So those would be ones. I went on a bit of a scramble there. The one that I like most is Amos plus 150 first round, but those would be other ones that you could bet based on the news and things that have come out this morning. I think the Banks under is probably priced more than fair at this point. Michael Williams priced more than fair to his under. And so I don't necessarily think I would run in and back either of those as well. Again, pardon me for butchering the last name, Joey. I'll get it right next show. Cowboy Kid, you mentioned a few days ago the prediction websites will open close to the draft and have some liquidity and more signal for price moves. What sites were you referring to here, Kalshi? Cowboy Kid, I'll go into those tomorrow or Wednesday here on the show. I'll have a breakdown of those, but you can look at perhaps Polymarket, Kalshi, Forecasters as 3 examples. Polymarket had a lot of the NFL awards, and I would say the first place that the NFL awards leaked was on Polymarket. Not a lot going on there at the moment. 4 million in volume for the first pick overall, but then other than that, there are really like 22, 25K for different markets that are available over at Polymarket. So I would keep an eye on that one now. If more things get posted, more things go up in the next coming days, we're probably going to see a lot. Now, I don't want to downplay that 4 million in volume on the first pick, but you're looking at that as a yes, no on one guy. For other ones, probably going to see a lot more pop up. So we'll have a prediction market overview, look at different markets in the next coming days, but Polymarket, Kalshi, Forecasters would be the top 3 that I would keep an eye on. And again, tying Polymarket back to those award show leaks for the NFL awards back a couple months ago, that's probably where we're going to see it go first. All right. Great show, 45 minutes. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. As always, I'll be back the rest of the week. I say, as always, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time, every day this week. Next week, we might go back to 3 days a week, but we'll have more draft talk tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday morning. Friday will be the reaction show to see how everybody did, talk maybe day 2 stuff that might get posted. And then the week after this week, we'll get to some more reaction stuff and begin shifting into schedule talk and previews as well. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Have a fantastic Monday, and we'll chat to you same time tomorrow morning.